how this individual is in our industry, in the mortgage space. All he does is watch rates. He is the market predictor of rates. He watches data, rates, trends, and he is one of the most data-driven experts in our industry that has been giving us rates for a long, long time now. So let me read it here. So Barry Habib is an American entrepreneur and frequent media source for his mortgage and housing expertise. He's the CEO of MBS Highway, the industry's most highly regarded and recognized tool for transforming salespeople, advisors into better salespeople. He used to be a loan originator, but Barry basically is the guru that tells us, should you lock rates, float rates, all that. He has a pile of experts that work for him, advisors that know what's going on, economists. So he's getting all the news, all the data, and trying to tell us to float the rate, to lock the rate, and what's going on. And so he's very in tune to data and the market and how everything affects rates. So it is his job to know this stuff. And people in our industry actually pay him to know this stuff. So he is writing this letter basically to Trump saying, hey, look, we're looking at the data, the real live data, and it's not what the feds are looking at. And if they were actually looking at this data, rates would already be cut. The long-term interest rates will probably be at least a point lower. So you're watching this video, the rate you just got quoted would be a point lower. It should be a point lower. So his argument in this letter that he sent to Trump is saying that the Federal Reserve is misleading the American people. So that means you're misleading when you get out there and talk. When Powell talks, he influences market. He influences the bond market, the treasury market, the stock market, everything, the long-term rates, the short-term rates, everything. He is a very powerful voice. That's why when you hear me joke around, I say big mouth Powell, because when he speaks, he moves markets globally here. So it's a big deal. So if he's actually looking at one of the biggest components we're going to talk about is shelter in place, and looking at old data, and the data has changed, we basically are not getting the real deal. We are not getting where inflation really sits today. And so if you are, let's say you're a homeowner, let's say you're a renter, let's say you own investment properties, maybe you're a renter, maybe you have realized like, wow, the rent I paid a year ago or 6 months ago, it's lower in the building I am. Or I just recently went and moved somewhere else. I'm like, I got a great deal. Well, that's why right now there's so much supply coming to the market, the rental market nationally, that it's an oversupply. There's not enough demand. So what happens when you have more supply and less demand? If you said, hey, prices are lower on rents, you got it. So you're seeing, big owners of apartment buildings or houses, whatever, and they can't rent them out. They're having to give you incentives, maybe 1 month free, 2 months free to move in, right? Things like that, maybe a lower deposit. So you're starting to see people give deals with rentals because the demand's not there. Eventually that demand will pick up and catch up because they're not going to keep building, and the inventory is not going to hit the market as much as it is over the next years. So this will catch up. So for right now, shelter in place, for example, is 40% of PCE number. So here's the key points of the letter, and then we're going to get into the data. So I'm going to read inflation metrics. Core PCE at 2.8, core CPI is 3.2 are keeping rates high. Shelter costs, housing and rents are overestimated and outdated. Real-time rental data suggests inflation is lower than reported. The Fed's flawed methodology has caused housing affordability issues. So let's fact check some of this, right? Because hey, you guys hear all this nonsense and BS out there. Well, why don't we fact check it and let's jump into the data. So core PCE and core CPI do include outdated shelter data. Shelter is 18% of core PCE and 46% of core CPI, heavily influencing inflation. Government uses 6 months rolling data, folks. 6 months ago. Think about 6 months ago. It's like there was a different president, a different administration, different Congress, Senate being like majority, right? It's a whole new world almost. So what real-time data shows? So private data from CoreLogic, Zillow, and Apartment List shows rents are only up 1.5% year over year, much lower than the 4.8 reported by the feds. That's a huge number. If the feds adjusted for real-time shelter costs, core PCE, are you ready? Which their core PCE is what they look at. That is the inflation report they look at, and they determine if they're going to cut rates, raise rates, or what they're going to talk about, like verbally blah, blah, blah out there, right? So core PCE is, remember we just said, is sitting at 2.8. If you took the shelter in place, the real data right now today, it would be at 2.2. Do you understand? If it was at 2.2, he would be cutting rates, the 10-year treasury lower, and your mortgage rate, if you're watching this video, would probably be a point lower. a point lower. Think about that on the cost. If you're talking about a $500 or $1 million loan amount, what are we talking about? $500, $1,000 a month? That's huge savings, and that's a huge penalty for having the wrong data.